I'm Ed Rabyd, otherwise known as the Rabyd Atheist, former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like. The purpose of this channel is educational in regards to atheist and deconversion issues. And, we throw in Bible, theology, politics, philosophy in relationship to those issues. Today, I want to talk a little bit about deconversion issues. And in this particular one, I was kind of inspired by some videos I've been watching lately from another YouTuber called Trees. Maybe some of you have seen this YouTuber in particular, but if you haven't, I'll leave a link to their channel above my head. But I find the one I was listening to recently was one of the perfect examples of, of dealing with somebody that asks those awful questions of, why didn't you just leave? There's a lot of assumptions about people who are in faith that this person really deals with. One is, we're not gullible. That's not why we stayed in the faith so long necessarily. It's not that we're stupid. It's not that, we had other issues that made us so vulnerable to staying in the faith long. Plenty of intelligent, non-gullible people are people of faith. And, the question I often get asked a lot, and I think a lot of us that have deconverted have experienced this: what took you so long? Why did it take you so long to come to terms with the fact that you are having to process this stuff to get out of the faith? And most of it has a lot to do with cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a concept that's been around for a while. But whenever we're fed new information that contradicts what we think we already know, we have a struggle with it. And we have a lot of different choices of how to handle that. And I think this one, the video I linked earlier is a video that talks specifically about this, that we have different choices. I don't know who runs, the actual name of the person who runs Trees, but he did a hell of a job explaining how cognitive dissonance gets into the heads of adults and how adults get involved in various cults and other things. Now, the real problem I think a lot of people have, and I sometimes have when people talk about this, because it's really easy to give an example of, say, somebody who got into Scientology or Jehovah's Witnesses or the Mormons or whatever cult you want to put in there, these very highly manipulative, controlling cults. It's easy to give them as an example, but what about people who are more mainstream Christian and come out and become atheist or agnostic or whatever? And a lot of the issue, I think, sometimes is we don't look at your form of Christianity wasn't all that bad, so you didn't really, maybe that's why you stayed with it so long. No, I don't think so. I think when I look back at my fundamentalist Pentecostal days, there's a real danger in Pentecostalism in particular, to absolutely deny reality, okay, in favor of this imaginary spiritualized delusion that people go forward with. And that's much cognitive dissonance as anything else. When you get to a story like mine, where I basically slowly but surely get rid of the weird aspects of Christianity and go for the more, how shall I say it, more mainstream Christian. And, now I'm mainstream Christian, so I'm not as dangerous as a cult person. As an anti-theist, I now recognize the cultic nature of every religion. Every religion has cultic aspects. Every religion relies on people's cognitive dissonance to keep people in the fold. Okay, it is a tough issue for us that have deconverted, because I got a comment a couple weeks ago on this channel. People can just leave. I don't know what your big deal about this channel is, and I had to remove the comment because he was totally, whoever it was just, completely vile about, it's the kind of atheist that I didn't like when I was in a Christian setting, because They weren't listening to me. They weren't dialoguing with me. They just said, you're a dumb, stupid idiot. They were one of those people that had those assumptions. And I run into that a lot is, people that look at you when you can deconverted and they're kind of untrusting of your deconversion because they're like, yeah, I've heard that before. Why don't you guys just leave? This is a fraud. This is fake. No, I often take exceptions with, some of the other YouTubers out there that have been atheists most of their life, and they don't understand why anybody would be fooled by religion. I don't know. Some people are fooled by political parties, even though they're atheists. And I'm like, yeah, the same thing. Cults. Some people were atheists and get involved in, various monetary scams, that are cult-like in their approach too. My point is this, that all of us can be fooled, that all of us can be scammed. And I think the real problem that I have with this attitude sometimes is there's certain sympathies for certain people that are deconverted if you come out of heavy-duty cult. But if you just come out of mainstream Christianity, sometimes I think people go, well, yeah, it was destined to happen. I don't know what the big deal was. You should have left a long time ago. It's just stupid. And it's not that at all. See, for those of us that grew up in the church, we have the issue of the fact that as children, we were taught that certain things were true right out the gate, which are just as harmful as any cult. When I was, some of my first memories are beginner class, where I'm being taught by the teacher about Noah's Ark and Adam and Eve and Jesus on the cross. And, it's all sterilized down for children. The version of Noah's Ark we got was, all the pretty parts of the story and not the entire world, people being drowned, from pregnant women to infants to, God, the pro-life God seems to be quite anti-life at that point, killing off pregnant women that obviously existed, killing off babies, infants, children, because they're all evil. Every single human being thought evil all the time. A truly impossible part of the story. But that part's left out. So what happens is when you're a child and you still haven't really developed this web of understanding the universe, you're very susceptible. And people put those things in there. This is true. This is true. And it begins to form this web in your head of belief. And you don't question it because you're a kid. This is what makes teaching religion to kids, in my opinion, a little bit insidious. And I debate with myself because I have family members that are still of the faith, and I have family members that are not of the faith. And when I see this kind of indoctrination going on, and I know what it is now, I know that it's going to reinforce things, and these people are going to struggle. And as with cognitive dissonance down the line, I have a problem with that, okay? Because I have a personal problem with it. But from a family standpoint, do I keep peace in the family sometimes? And I don't, I really struggle with this, and the problem is I don't think we can avoid it in this world. I think one of the naive things that atheists believe is somehow if they just present the truth of what they believe, all of a sudden people are going to just go, oh, you're so right. And they're just going to deconvert. No, that's not the way it works. Your idealism about atheism being so true, even if it is true, doesn't necessarily work for everybody. It takes time because of the cognitive dissonance. And so I think a lot of atheists get very impatient. They don't understand that there's a whole web that's gone on with this person since they were a child. Now, with adults, it's a little bit different because you have to kind of take people back to their childhood where they're inadequate, and you invest time and money. And slowly but surely, as you get involved in a cult or a religion or whatever, the real problem is you've sunk cost into this, and so you stick with it. And it's a sunk cost fallacy. A lot of people use this with me on a lot of different things. And I'm like, the problem is we are so susceptible because of cognitive dissonance to the sunk cost fallacy. We put effort into it. Our lives are in it. Very many people, young adults, for instance, they're married and they've got a couple of kids and they're in this community, and everything is about this community, and they've cut themselves off from the rest of the world. And that is what is so hard about this. And it's why I'm a compassionate anti-theist. I work very hard for anti-theism, but I do it as compassionate as I can because I understand that this is going to take a shit ton of patience, and it's going to take an absolute dedication to putting the truth out there about religion, to the point that I know that a lot of people that are going to come here, I've had debates on this channel about various things and where I point out the obvious flaws in every Bible story. I can do that all day long. Okay, you open up the Bible, and now that I've learned to question the Bible with all my Bible and theology degree knowledge, plus all of my personal study over 20-some years, actually almost 40 years, I now look at the Bible, and because I'm allowed to question it as an atheist and I'm allowed to see the flaws again, it's easy. It's easy for me to rip apart. I can take the Bible, open it up, read any story, and rip it to shreds. Okay, mostly it's like, what evidence do we have of this other than the Bible? Nothing. 90% of what people believe about the Bible is the Bible telling me so. And it's like, when you point that out to them, that there's no other evidence for that story, well, the Bible stands as evidence. No, it doesn't. If you're trying to prove that the Bible is true, you have to use sources outside of it to prove that this story is true. And this is the real challenge for us as atheists, is being patient on the one hand, realizing that we had this own, especially if you deconverted, you have this whole web of stuff that is still up there. And that's why deconversion is still an issue for me, is because I'll find myself thinking along certain patterns. And I trace back what that pattern is based on. And it's this web of belief that has been formed, and there's still a part of it over here, a part of it over here. If you picture this, interconnected information web in your head, and you realize, okay, this part I've destroyed because I don't believe this anymore, and this part I've destroyed, and I put a needle here and poke that little thing, and it's blown up. But the web is still there, and you start thinking, well, why the hell am I thinking this way? And you start backtracking through what you don't believe anymore, and you find, oh shit, I kind of still believe that. I still believe this little bit of information. Well, is that true? And then you go look it up, and you do some research, and your viewpoint changes. This is why deconversion is a process, and it's a lifelong process, I think, for all of us, because I have a real problem sometimes differentiating between, like, when I was a Christian and I was a fundamentalist Christian, I had all these political views. I was pro-life. I was, anti-LGBTQ. That's against God's will. I would justify the genocide in the Bible. I would justify the murder in the Bible, the rape, all that stuff. When I became an atheist, I realized all that isn't justified anymore. I don't have but it took me a while to think through all those issues again and come up with, okay, what rational viewpoint can I have on this issue? So I guess the interest of discussion today and looking at this, I'm interested in any stories out there of moments where you realize that your cognitive dissonance was still there even after you deconverted. Because what I think I want to look at maybe here is the idea of how change is slow and it takes time. And even after you reach that pivotal moment where you shift from I believe to I no longer believe, because almost every testimony I've heard from many of people that have left the faith is it's this slow, gradual process where different things chip off, and your cognitive dissonance holds you in the faith, but you have to change your viewpoint. I'm going to give an example of my own theology. When I got out of Bible college, I was pretty much what they call an Arminian believer. I believed in free will. I was very much, people are predestined based on the foreknowledge of God. God doesn't necessarily force a person to be of the faith. That's their choice. I believed in free will. And over time, though, I began to realize that theology had a lot of faults to it. The same was true with Calvinism. I rejected Calvinism pretty early because it has a lot of flaws. It's one I can still, of all the theologies in the world, I'm not sure which is more evil, Calvinism or Roman Catholicism, okay, as far as theology. But I discarded all that because, I could obviously see the shit in it. But my own Arminian beliefs, I began to, from Joseph Aramis, I'm like, no, there's some problems here too. As I evolved in that, I went more and more redefining the omnes. What I mean by that is God, I began to look at the definitions of omnipotence, omniscience, and all that stuff, and I began to change them slowly over time. And eventually I became a very open theist kind of believer where God knows everything that's knowable in the way that is knowable, which kind of makes God's knowledge subject to the universe, which is the fatal flaw of open theism, by the way. And so how's that God any different than us, other than he has the capacity to know everything and know every possible outcome? It doesn't force any of those outcomes, but, keeps them. And that was kind of my last perch. And then I realized some of the flaws in that. And I said, well, Jesus Christ, the next thing is, complete, God really isn't God anymore. I was holding on to the last vestiges of God being omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, and suddenly realizing that I couldn't do that. And a lot of this had to do with my deconversion at that point, because from a theological perspective, I'm realizing that the best theology I can come up with still is very, very flawed. And so at that point, that's when I started to wrestle with the question of belief or non-belief. And I began to look at the evidence of what I had to believe what I believed. And it was a long process. When I deconverted 3 years before I left the ministry, I had been going through that process for 2 years of breaking down to the point where I got to the point where, well, shit, there's a lot of things I can't prove. And of course, if you've read my deconversion story, which I'll link above my head, that issue was, does sin exist? Okay. And I had no empirical evidence for the idea of sin existing. It was just something that the Bible had made up to explain a certain phenomena in the world. But there was no empirical evidence that sin existed. I'm not even sure that the ideas of good and evil are really rational anymore. There's that which causes suffering, if you want to label that as evil, and there's that that causes good. And those are the two forces in this world. And so that's kind of the way it is. So I guess I'm kind of interested in any of your stories of, moments after your deconversion where you still wrestle with things and suddenly realize, holy shit, that's my faith. That's the way I used to think when I was being a person of faith. And I can't think that way. So that's kind of where I'm at. That's my own personal story, but I'll leave it at that. And thank you once again for following along. And one of the other things I'm going to do, and I'm not going to do it today because I just want to announce it here, is a way of dealing with comments. I'm going to pick out some of the best comments, and at the end of every video, I'm just going to quickly deal with one comment and I'm going to call it the comment of the video that I'm dealing with. And I'm going to try to deal with as recent a comments as I can. I'm going to get rid of this whole idea. I want to talk about deconversion. I'm going to ramble on Friday and talk about some issues. And then Wednesday is going to be a little bit more, whatever I feel like talking about as an issue. That's pretty open, and I'm kind of actually more scared of that one than the other two. So, but thank you. I just want to let you know that comments are going to kind of still be addressed every video now. And I'm going to address with, ones that I feel are pertinent to the situation, or ones that are pertinent to what we're talking about. So thank you once again, and hopefully I can convince you to be a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, this is Ed Rabyd, also known as the Rabid Atheist, signing off and wishing you a good day.